welcome to the Creativity Conference official podcast. My name is Aidan Rhode. I am the assistant manager here at the Creativity Conference and very excited to be hosting this podcast with some fantastic world-class creative speakers discussing all aspects of creativity. Today, I'm joined by Alli McGuire, who is the co-founder of AwarenessTies and the editor-in-chief of the Aware Now magazine, which is read all over the world and raises awareness for a whole suite of humanitarian causes. Alli, how are things?
Things are well. Excited to be here in 2022.
You delivered a fantastic presentation for us for the Creativity Conference back in August 2021. How did you find the conference? Did you attend any other sessions?
I did. I unfortunately was only able to attend just a couple, so I was so glad that all of them were recorded. And what an incredible opportunity to be able to go back and to revisit these things. It reminded me a bit of Aware Now magazine that we don't put dates on any of the issues because we feel the content that's shared is so timeless. The same can be said with Creativity Conference. Even if you're not able to attend that day, that all of the sessions have this timeless quality about them, that they're always relevant. And the conference was fantastic. It was wonderful to have a stage that didn't have a specific format diagnosed for it, but rather something where you could just truly be creative, speaking to its name. So it was a wonderful experience.
Precisely. And you've done sort of this sort of thing before. You've delivered a TED Talk in the past, which has a similar format in that it's fairly timeless, and you can go back and watch this vast archive of TED Talks. Obviously, it was several years ago that you did that, but how did you find the experience of delivering a TED Talk back when you did? And was there any aspects of that in particular that were unique to a TED Talk that weren't aspects that someone like myself who has not given a TED Talk wouldn't necessarily appreciate?
I mean, there's something about, there's always the cachet of, oh, it's a TED, so there's that, as a presenter, you feel certainly honored to be on the stage, but then also there's this expectation that comes with it, that you have to deliver this particular sort of quality in your presentation. And so, but just having that alignment, having that personal alignment with technology, education, design, and to really speak to it. It was awesome. It was an awesome experience that I very much enjoyed and very much just embraced. Same thing with Creativity Conference. When you really can find alignment on the stage that you're standing, it's really empowering and really inspiring, not only for the content that you're sharing for your audience, but just for you as a presenter in that experience.
And how do you sort of retain that alignment with your sort of day-to-day work with AwarenessTies? How do you keep it interesting and keep it fulfilling when it's, day after day of the same organization?
Yeah, I guess with every day, just like every moment cannot be relived. Every single story we share, it's so unique that there could be no other. It reminds me of Highlander, actually, in that regard. There can be only one, and that is the same way with these stories. There can be only one, no other replication possible. And that's what makes every day so amazing and inspiring, just the uniqueness of it, and recognizing for what it is, a unique experience that cannot be revisited for sure, but not relived. And there's a big difference there. So yeah, never boring, ever.
Amazing. What are some of your biggest projects at the moment with AwarenessTies that are particularly creatively regenerating or interesting?
Yeah. It's just, I guess it's about creativity in general, actually. Not only in the content that we produce, but in the collaborations that we engage with. So a lot of people will look at creativity and they'll look at the endpoint. They'll look at the output of it as opposed to the process of it. So they're focused so much on the form that it takes and not the functionality that it serves. And so right now, as we enter 22, we're really trying to say, okay, this year let's make sure that our North Star is in alignment, and that we are in alignment with it. And we're really just excited about the collaborations that we're doing with different people, bringing on new ambassadors, new columnists, new partners, new nonprofits we're working with, new cover stories and features. And so our environment is being informed by our engagements that we're having. And so we're creating this ecosystem that really is informing the way that we're moving forward. And so we've had a huge learning curve. Like our learning curve has been like this, like straight line up. And so on that straight line, we have found that while we believe this is the way to go, and this is our plan, and this is our course, it's all well and good to have that. But we're finding the wins along the way are found on the detours that we take, and really reinforms and redirects where we're going. And so right now, while some people would be terrified of that, like, what? No, no, no. This is A, B, C, D. These are the points. We're really embracing it and not adhering to any specific model or way of doing things. I mean, we never have. But even more so now, just allowing ourselves to find our way through exploration. Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, and in terms of things sort of taking a bit of a U-turn and diversions, the last 2 years in the pandemic and lockdown have certainly been like that for everybody. How did you find that the pandemic? I mean, obviously, I'm sure we could talk about this for hours, but in a nutshell, how did you find that the pandemic and lockdown affected your workflow and creativity? And did you find that you were sort of creatively stifled in some ways or enabled in other ways that you perhaps weren't expecting?
You know what's interesting I found is that creativity for me, for us, has really become a result of necessity. You know, some people, when they hear the word creativity, think of, oh, something that you can do and dream about and these kinds of things. They don't necessarily think about it as a necessity, but that's what it was for us. So when we talk about the pandemic, now we were, Aidan, this is what Awareness Ties was before the pandemic. Awareness ties called awareness ties for a reason, that you put on this tie and it's green, and that's, you know, for the environment and raising awareness that way. So you put on this zipper tie that is your symbol of support, meant to be a conversation starter. That's our logo there on the bottom, for guys, for girls, the young, the old. One tie fits all. And that's what we were going to do. So we were going to do fundraising events and concerts and all these things. We had events set up in LA with Samsung, and in Chicago on top of the Witt Hotel with American Cancer Society, and then the pandemic. So here we go. Put the tie back, because there is no event and no ties to be worn to such event. So creativity was a necessity, because we had built a whole plan, a whole platform based on this concept of events and physical ties and engagements. And from the, I'm not going to say pivot, because it's been used entirely too much, we had to shift gears. And I would say to a higher gear, because as a result of the shift that was required, we creatively came to focus not on raising awareness one tie at a time, but on raising awareness one story at a time. And so it was creativity that allowed us to shift and actually find our way on a new path that was perhaps the true path of where we were supposed to be. Because again, the tie was meant to be a conversation starter, meant to be an invitation to share a story about one cause or another. So instead of raising awareness a tie at a time, raising awareness a story at a time. And there we have Aware Now magazine. Aware Now magazine, Aware Now podcast, Aware Now talk shows. So that shift created this content platform and getting right to the source, right to the stories. And it was because of the pandemic, because of COVID, that happened. So yeah, I mean, when we look at the blessing and a curse, and finding that silver lining, because there's got to be one always, that was ours.
Yeah. And I think I still have I've got an awareness tie or two myself in
Wonderful.
my wardrobe from the pajama party at Cannes Film Festival.
Well, hold on to it, because when things open back up, you're going to need it.
I plan on it. I've kept it in an under lock and key. It's one of my
Well, you should.
prized possessions. So what are the next steps for awareness ties? What are in the next 2, 3, 5 years? Where do you see it going in this tumultuous time post COVID and going on from lockdowns?
The exciting thing is we have no idea. And that's really exciting.
Yeah.
What we are all in about is not a specific course, but rather specific relationships, specific partnerships, and allowing those relationships and those engagements to inform where we are to head. Certainly, it's always going to be based on raising awareness. It's always going to be based on the story and using storytelling to provide positive social change in this world. So how we do that, because of COVID, we shifted to the magazine, to the podcast. Perhaps something new will come. Maybe 7 variants down the road, there will be another shift required. We don't know, but what we do know right now, what is concrete that we can depend on and rely on and invest our time and our talent in, is our relationships, our partnerships, the people. Because it's the people that will make or break anything that we're going to be doing. And so it's our columnists, it's our ambassadors, it's getting on phone calls and saying, hey, I've got an idea, and like, well, okay, this is the stage, because it's all we are. That's not all we are, but what we've built is the stage, and that is our base. And so this virtual stage of sorts is an invitation for people to come on and take that center stage, to be in the spotlight. And so what that format looks like will change and evolve as we go. And so again, it's really just finding the right people to be part of this. Yeah.
Yeah, you've worked on a lot of projects even before Awareness Ties. Are there any projects that you've worked on in particular that, be it with Awareness Ties or beforehand, that you have a bit of a soft spot for, but are potentially underappreciated and that you wish more people knew about?
Ooh, there's been so many. I mean, one thing I suppose is I really miss the poetry. I really miss the speaking. I really miss that engagement. Um, I miss having the time and the bandwidth to pick up the pen and just write, and then to recite. I miss that a bit. Projects in the past where I've used that, I mean, certainly I used to go and host open mic events and go into schools and colleges and perform and recite. And so that work I do miss. And I did find so much satisfaction and so much pleasure in that. Felt very proud of that work, especially when I got to work with kids, when I got to go into like inner city school systems and really just see them wake up. Yeah, I've been involved in lots of projects, like going to France, going to, to Cannes, going to New Zealand to film, going to Spain, like going all over the place and doing all these things. But probably what I'm most proud of in terms of a body of work was the work that came in the form of words that were shared, specifically with kids. And yeah.
That is sort of a running theme, actually. My most recent podcast recording was with Gordon McLellan, and he said that one of his fondest memories of his entire career was working with kids in schools and doing these workshops with with rocks and nature, and just seeing them sort of just light up with this just flurry of imagination, and just seeing them just roll with it was just amazing.
Yeah, yeah, and it really is a testament to, I think that speaks to this common thing that we all have and that we all share, and it's not the whole, it's not a cliche, the whole sharing is caring thing. I mean, it is a cliche, but for good reason. Um, when you live with the intention to give, um, I think that's where it's at. And it's an interesting thing, isn't it, to say that when you give, you get so much. Um, and so I think we've got to start thinking that way. We need to start as a society to sort of re-engineering, reimagining what the win really looks like, what it really sounds like, what it really feels like. Because I think that's why people continue to be so hungry for success, is because the success that they have imagined in their head is not what will actually make them happy in the end. So I think, with all of the bad and the hurt and the loss that we've all experienced through this pandemic on different levels, that the win that we all have, if nothing else, is just perspective. We've all been forced to look at this world and at one another through a very different lens. And we're all in the same boat. The first time in our humanity that all of us have been faced with this common thing that has, done a 180 for everyone. When we all don't know. And as scary as that is, there's something exciting about it. There's something exciting about the challenge of that. How will I rise to this? How will I overcome this? And that's exciting and that's inspiring. When we look at creativity as it's, related to this, is, how can we use creativity to overcome this? Because we've got to get creative. We have to create a win. And yeah. So I never really looked at creativity as a necessity until only recently, through this other lens I've been seeing things through lately. But I think it truly is. So, and people look at things, they say, oh, creativity, it's not just for painters and for poets and thespians. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about not being tethered to the outcome of the thing, but rather to the process of the thing. And looking at, if you're a creative, like, to look at the verb of it and not the noun of it, and not to be so fixed on what that endpoint is, but rather to be able to connect the dots on the way. For the first time, I was showing my son a connect the dots. He says, "What this, mama?" And I said, "Well, this is connect the dots." And I was explaining that we have to connect all the numbers. And he's like, I want numbers for dots. And I said, "Okay, you go ahead and you just connect them any way you want." And he did. And he went and he was connecting. I was like, I think that looks quite nice. I think that's probably better than if you would have followed those numbers. And it was a learning experience for me to say, how many of us have connected the dots in our lives based on these numerical values next to them, as opposed to what felt like the natural order for ourselves and for our direction. Next time you look at a connect the dots thing, you should rethink it, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, you've talked a bit about sort of outside of work there, but what are some other creative outlets that you do outside of your day-to-day job that keep you fulfilled creatively, be it writing or even just spending time with your kids?
Mm-hmm. Do a lot of imagining with our 3-year-old lately. And so that's been fun to sort of, we can, so many people, when you hear people refer to, oh, living through their kids, oh, that person's just living through their son or living through their daughter and that kind of thing. There's this negative connotation to it sometimes, often. But when you can positively live, not through your kids, but with your kids, you know, in a way where you can be taken back to this sort of this pure, raw state of realities not being predefined and being able to have permission to go into imaginary land, and things can be purple or gray or upside down, and creating new languages, like my son does a lot. And or silly things. My son, I said, would you like to go to the salon? I think you should go to the salon today. Come now. My name is Gertrude. Now he calls me Gertrude. Mama, is Gertrude going to come today? Well, she's here now, didn't you know? And so it's being able to take these invitations from our children to enter this other world, and it allows us to escape our own and really just engage through play. And then when we come back to our world, our adult world, to be a little more relaxed, a little more comfortable in our own skin, and with a bit more permission to do things as we'd like to do and not as we're prescribed to do. So it's always such a good reminder, for sure.
Yeah, and we've touched on this several times already, but I've asked every single person on the podcast so far the same question, and it's intentionally very vague and open ended. But what does creativity mean to you? I mean, you've said that it's not this sort of quixotic, dreamy land that some people might think it is. But yeah, what does creativity mean to you?
I kind of want to say creativity is a bit of a state of mind. I think it's not one static thing. It's very dynamic. Everything from how I format the magazine, to how I set the table, to how I speak to my children, the intonation of my voice, the way I hold my coffee cup. It's in all these details, to me, that creativity resides. It's not necessarily an action as much as it is a lens. When you can look at things through a creative lens to, again, see things and address things, not in a prescribed fashion, but in a way that speaks to you and that is authentic of that moment. I think that's creativity. I don't think it's this. I mean, what is creativity not? Maybe it's not this trendy, oh, creativity, and isn't that fun, or isn't that exciting? And it's more just, it's part of your DNA, I think. I don't think it's anything that can be taught. I think it's something that can be realized. I think it's something that can be unveiled, unleashed, understood in new ways. But I don't think creativity for me is everything, I suppose. It's sort of my being. It's sort of not only in what's created, but in how it's created. For example, we have one of our ambassadors, Sage Gallon, who is our ambassador for homelessness awareness. He's also an incredible painter. He was so kind the other day as to donate not one, but two of his original works to AwarenessTies. He's like, I thought perhaps, you could auction these off, and we're working to raise some seed funds for sort of next leveling the work that we're doing. And I said, well, that's great. And he said, well, yeah, so if you want to like auction them, I was like, that's amazing. And it's so awesome. But then I said to myself, Alli, how do you do an online auction? You don't know how to do an online auction. I said, well, I better figure out how to do an online auction. That's the other thing, creativity. I talk to myself quite a bit, and I'm okay with that. And I think that's important for creativity, to be comfortable with that, dynamic in yourself. All that said, so because I could creatively construct a solution, I got online, I found a couple of different options. I said, okay, well, here's an option. Let's figure this out. I didn't know anything about the platform, about the thing. I worked through it, figured it out, and now we've got this gorgeous platform for doing online auctions. And in seeing this, our other investor said, hey, I don't have a painting, but I have my time. I could donate this. Can I do that? Oh, well, sure. That's great. And so you see how creativity has then fueled creativity in others and other creative solutions. I'm finding that creativity is perhaps the most important requirement for finding solutions. And yeah, so now that I think about it, creativity is not only a necessity, but a requirement, which I suppose is synonymous. But
and it's also inherently connective and collaborative, but it's also inherently very, the world is so distracting that to really find that flow state of mind, you really have to be in sort of your own zone, in just on your own, working on your own thing. But in doing that, as you say, it then leads to these connections with other people. I mean, think about the creativity conference. We've got so many different people involved from all around the world in so many different creative disciplines, but we're all connected by the same thing.
yeah, and that's a good point. Yes. That while there are so many of us in these different areas, that there is that, speaking the other day about it, people say, why do you do so many causes? Like, pick a lane, stay in it. I'm like, no, because all of the causes are tied together by one cause, which is the human cause. There's that universal thread and they're like, what is the universal thread? And I'm like, no. And for a minute, I'm like, I don't know. But it became very clear that it is empathy, storytelling, this podcast that we're doing now, the stories that we share in the magazine, the conversations you have on the phone with someone. The exchange there is empathy. It's being able to step outside of yourself and into the shoes of someone else and be there. And it's about that space that these podcasts allow for, that these stories that are printed allow for, that these conversations allow for. It's allowing space that can be shared, where we can understand each other and engage with each other. And that's what's common about all of it and about all of us.
Well, we are quickly approaching the end of our time. It's been wonderful to have you on. You're thinking of joining us in Iceland in August 2022 for the in-person iteration of the Creativity Conference. All going well. Is there anything in particular that you're excited for about Iceland?
Everything. I've never been to Iceland. I've seen and heard amazing things about it. So yeah, I think just being there, but more than that, just physically being able to meet everyone and to connect that way. There's a lot to be gained and enjoyed in virtual experiences such as this, but to have that physical space and share that physical energy, that's I'm excited.
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait. So, and hopefully we'll see some of you listening there as well. That would be fantastic.
Yes.
But that's all we have time for. So thank you very much, Alli, for joining me. It's been lovely to have you on the podcast. And
thank you, Aidan.
Yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll see you in Iceland.
All right, see you in Iceland.